There exists a particular mathematics to human existence that most refuse to acknowledge, a calculus so precise and so merciless that the mind instinctively recoils from its implications. Consider this. A single human lifetime, stretched generously to 80 years, amounts to approximately 700,000 hours of consciousness. Subtract the time spent sleeping, that necessary oblivion that claims 1/3 of existence, and you are left with roughly 480,000 waking hours. 480,000 discrete, irreplaceable units of time in which to construct meaning, legacy, and self. To love and be loved. To create something that outlasts your body. To transform from the raw material of potential into the finished architecture of actualized being. Yet for the vast majority of human beings, these hours dissolve like salt in water, unmeasured and unmarked, streaming past in an unbroken blur of distraction and postponement until suddenly, without warning, the vessel runs empty. They look up one day and discover that decades have evaporated. The person they promised themselves they would become remains trapped in the distant country of someday, while the person they actually became is a stranger built from 10,000 small surrenders to comfort and convenience. You are watching this video because somewhere in the architecture of your consciousness, an alarm has begun to sound. Perhaps it is quiet still, barely perceptible, a distant tremor beneath the surface of your daily routine, easy to ignore in the morning rush and the evening collapse. Or perhaps it has become deafening, a relentless drumbeat that jolts you awake at 3 a.m. with the suffocating realization that years have passed and you have moved nowhere meaningful. The life you imagined constructing, the business you would build, the book you would write, the body you would sculpt, the relationships you would deepen, remains trapped in the realm of someday, that convenient fiction where dreams go to die slowly and quietly. Meanwhile, the life you are actually living consists of scrolling through other people's highlight reels, consuming content about how to live rather than actually living, and waiting for a moment of inspiration that arrives with sufficient force to overcome your inertia. That moment never comes. Inspiration is not a lightning bolt from the heavens. It is not a mystical visitation that transforms you overnight from paralyzed to productive. Inspiration, when it does appear, is weak and fleeting, easily overpowered by the gravitational pull of habit and comfort. You have been sold a mythology that change requires a dramatic catalyst, hitting rock bottom, having an epiphany, experiencing a crisis, when in truth waiting for such a moment is simply another sophisticated form of procrastination. This is not another motivational sermon designed to generate temporary enthusiasm. This is not a collection of platitudes wrapped in cinematic imagery and inspiring music, designed to make you feel good for 12 minutes before you return to the exact patterns that brought you here. What you are about to receive is a detailed autopsy of the mechanisms that have hijacked your existence, followed by a precise surgical protocol for reclaiming it. By the time this journey concludes, you will possess a map of the invisible battlefield within your skull and the exact coordinates of victory. You will understand why you fail repeatedly at the same goals. You will see clearly how your own neurobiology has been weaponized against your stated intentions, and you will have a tactical framework for fighting back. But understand this clearly from the outset. The truths ahead are uncomfortable. They will strip away the protective delusions you have carefully constructed to justify your paralysis. They will reveal that the enemy you have been fighting is not external circumstance or insufficient time or bad luck or the wrong childhood or the unfair system, but something far more intimate and far more treacherous. The enemy is a part of you, an ancient system embedded in your neural architecture, and it has been winning every day of your life because you did not know you were in a war. The transformation awaiting you on the other side of this knowledge is not gentle. It is not a gradual awakening accompanied by soft music and inspiring imagery. It is the jarring recognition that you have been asleep at the controls of your own life, and that every hour of delay represents an irretrievable fragment of your finite existence that you chose to feed to the machine of nothingness. Once you possess this awareness, you cannot unpossess it. You cannot return to the comfortable fog of unconscious living. The red pill, once swallowed, cannot be vomited back up. You will be forced to choose, moment by moment, between feeding the machine of your actual potential or continuing to sacrifice it on the altar of immediate comfort. Let us begin with the most pervasive lie in modern existence, the mythology of insufficient time. You claim you lack time to pursue meaningful work, to develop mastery, to construct the life architecture you profess to desire. You repeat this claim so often with such conviction that it has calcified into perceived truth, an unquestionable axiom upon which you have built an entire philosophy of limitation. But this is a magnificent deception, one of the most successful pieces of self-propaganda ever constructed by the human mind. Consider that William Shakespeare wrote 37 plays, 154 sonnets, and revolutionized the English language forever, while simultaneously managing a theater company and performing as an actor, all before the age of 52. Leonardo da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa, designed flying machines centuries before flight was possible, conducted groundbreaking anatomical studies by dissecting cadavers in secret, created detailed engineering, diagrams, and filled 13,000 pages of notebooks with observations and inventions. Marie Curie discovered two elements, polonium and radium, won 2 Nobel Prizes in different scientific fields, physics and chemistry, and raised 2 daughters who also became accomplished scientists, all while facing relentless discrimination in a male-dominated academic world and working in a laboratory so contaminated with radiation that her notebooks are still too dangerous to handle without protective equipment. Marcus Aurelius governed the Roman Empire, led military campaigns, and wrote Meditations, one of the foundational texts of Stoic philosophy, during breaks in warfare and governance. Each of these individuals possessed precisely the same 24 hours per day that you possess. They experienced fatigue, distraction, illness, disappointment, and doubt. They faced obstacles that would crush most people. Yet they produced bodies of work that have echoed across centuries. The difference lies not in the quantity of time available, but in how each discrete hour is allocated, protected, and weaponized toward a singular vision. The truth you must confront is this: you do not lack time, you lack priority. You lack the willingness to defend your hours against the infinite army of trivialities that masquerade as necessity. Every moment you spend scrolling through manufactured outrage and curated fantasy is a moment stolen from the project of becoming. Every evening dissolved in passive consumption is an evening subtracted from your potential masterpiece. The mathematics is ruthless and unforgiving. If you spend 3 hours per day on social media, you're investing 90 hours per month, 1,095 hours per year, into absolutely nothing of permanence or value. That is 45 complete days annually, nearly 7 full weeks of waking consciousness, fed directly into a machine designed to monetize your attention and leave you with precisely 0 return on investment. Yet knowing this changes nothing. You have heard variations of this argument countless times before, nodded in solemn agreement, perhaps even felt a brief spark of determination, and then returned immediately to the exact patterns you intellectually recognize as destructive. Why? Because intellectual understanding is not sufficient to override the deeper programming that governs your behavior. You are engaged in a war you do not fully comprehend, against an enemy you have not properly identified. There exists within your brain a primitive system that evolutionary biologists sometimes refer to as the limbic system, though this clinical terminology fails utterly to capture its true nature and the scope of its power over your daily choices. For our purposes, and for the sake of clarity that cuts through academic obfuscation, we will call it what it truly is, the pleasure parasite. Imagine an ancient pre-linguistic entity nested deep in your neural architecture, a remnant from an evolutionary epoch predating your capacity for abstract thought by millions of years. This entity emerged when humans were little more than clever apes, navigating a hostile world of scarcity, predators, and constant physical threat. The pleasure parasite has zero interest in your long-term flourishing, your legacy, your self-actualization, or your happiness 5 years from now. It cannot conceptualize next month, let alone next year, or the person you might become, or the impact you might leave behind after death. These abstract temporal concepts simply do not exist in its vocabulary. It speaks only one language, the oldest language in biology: immediate comfort, immediate pleasure, immediate relief from discomfort. Now, not later. Easy, not hard. Safe, not risky. Known, not unknown. It is the voice that whispers later when you consider starting difficult work. It is the impulse that redirects your hand toward the phone when you sit down to write. It is the mechanism that generates a sudden, overwhelming urge to reorganize your closet, or clean your kitchen, or research the optimal productivity system precisely at the moment when you should be tackling your most important project. It is the force that makes you choose the familiar pain of stagnation over the unfamiliar discomfort of growth. The parasite is brilliant at its job, which is to keep you safe, comfortable, and mediocre. The parasite is not evil. This is critical to understand. It did not evolve to sabotage you. It evolved as a survival mechanism when humans lived in environments of genuine scarcity and constant physical threat, when energy conservation was literally the difference between surviving winter and dying of starvation, when novel experiences often meant encountering a predator or hostile tribe. In that context, conserving energy and seeking immediate caloric reward was highly adaptive. The human who took risks, who expended energy without guaranteed return, who prioritized abstract future goals over immediate needs, was the human who got eaten or starved. The parasite kept your ancestors alive long enough to reproduce. The parasite does not want you to read the challenging book. It wants you to scroll through comments about the challenging book. It does not want you to create the YouTube video that requires research, scripting, filming, and editing. It wants you to watch 73 YouTube videos about how other people created YouTube videos. It does not want you to have the difficult conversation that might repair your broken relationship. It wants you to fantasize about the conversation while eating comfort food and watching television. The parasite is a master of substitution. It allows you to feel productive while accomplishing nothing of substance. It permits you to spend 6 hours working while producing 2 hours of actual output. It convinces you that planning is the same as doing, that intention equals action, that tomorrow will somehow be different from today despite zero change in the underlying conditions. Understand this: the parasite is not a bug in your system, it is a feature, and it is operating exactly as designed. The problem is that the design specifications were written for a world that no longer exists. You are piloting a vehicle built for off-road survival through the digital age, and it is catastrophically mismatched to the terrain. The state the parasite prefers above all others is what we might call the shadow playground, a peculiar twilight zone of unearned leisure where you are neither fully relaxing nor genuinely working, neither truly present nor completely absent. You are scrolling through social media, but you feel guilty about it, a low-grade anxiety humming in the background. You are watching content, but you are simultaneously haunted by the growing list of neglected responsibilities, the deadline approaching, the promise you made to yourself that you broke again. You are technically free to do whatever you want, but you are imprisoned by the knowledge that you are wasting time you will never recover. This is not rest. This is not rejuvenation. This is not the earned leisure that comes after genuine effort, the kind of rest that actually restores your energy and clarity. This is a peculiar form of psychological torture in which you experience neither the deep satisfaction of real accomplishment nor the genuine pleasure of guilt-free relaxation. You exist in a gray zone of semi-conscious consumption, anesthetized but never truly at peace, distracted but never fully engaged, entertained but never actually happy. You are nowhere, suspended in the void between who you are and who you could be, burning hours like kindling and receiving nothing but ash in return. The parasite loves this state because it provides just enough stimulation to quiet your existential anxiety while requiring zero actual risk or effort. You can spend an entire weekend in the shadow playground, consuming hundreds of pieces of content, scrolling through thousands of updates, and arrive at Monday morning feeling more depleted than you did on Friday evening. You rested for 48 hours, yet you're exhausted. You had free time, yet you accomplished nothing that matters to you. You were entertained, yet you feel empty. This is the ultimate victory for the parasite, keeping you permanently distracted from the fact that you are dying, one wasted hour at a time, while never allowing you to feel truly alive. The biological mechanism underlying this hijacking is precise, measurable, and utterly merciless. Your brain operates on a neurotransmitter called dopamine, which functions as both a reward signal and a motivational fuel. Contrary to popular understanding, dopamine is not the chemical of pleasure itself. It is the chemical of wanting, of anticipation, of movement toward a goal. It is the neurochemical that makes you care about things. When properly calibrated, your dopamine system is extraordinarily effective. It motivates you to pursue challenging but achievable objectives. You feel a surge of motivation when you envision completing a difficult project. You experience genuine satisfaction when you make measurable progress toward a meaningful goal. The system is designed to create a beautiful feedback loop: anticipate reward, work toward reward, receive reward, feel satisfaction and pride, anticipate next reward. But here is where the system reveals its vulnerability, the exact point where it can be exploited and corrupted. Your brain, for all its remarkable sophistication, cannot distinguish between dopamine generated by genuine accomplishment and dopamine generated by artificial stimulus. At the neurochemical level, they are identical. A notification on your phone triggers the same dopamine response as making real progress on a meaningful goal. A like on your social media post activates the same reward pathway as completing a challenging workout or having a deep conversation with someone you love or finishing a creative project. The problem is that these artificial triggers are instantaneous, require zero effort, involve zero risk, and can be repeated indefinitely with no diminishing returns in the short term. They are dopamine on demand, a neurochemical vending machine that dispenses reward without requiring any genuine achievement, any real effort, any meaningful risk, or any actual growth. Press button, receive pellet, infinite loop. And because the parasite cannot distinguish between genuine accomplishment and simulated accomplishment, it becomes rapidly and completely addicted to the easy path. When you flood your system with these cheap dopamine hits hour after hour, day after day, something catastrophic occurs at the cellular level. Your receptors begin to downregulate. Imagine your dopamine receptors as a series of locks distributed throughout your brain's reward circuitry, and dopamine molecules as keys that fit these locks. When you experience a natural reward, completing a difficult task, having a meaningful conversation, finishing a challenging workout, creating something with your hands, your brain releases a measured, proportional amount of dopamine, and the receptors respond appropriately. The locks open, You feel satisfaction, the system remains balanced. But when you hammer your system with artificial spikes, scrolling for hours, gaming until dawn, consuming pornography, eating ultra-processed foods engineered by food scientists to hit your bliss point, binge-watching entire seasons in single sittings, your brain interprets this as a toxic flood, a dangerous overload that threatens the system's stability. To protect itself from what it perceives as neurotoxic excess, it begins to shut down receptors. It is attempting to normalize an abnormal input by reducing its sensitivity to the signal. This is not a conscious decision. This is automatic damage control at the cellular level. The result is neurological devastation. You require increasingly intense stimulation to feel anything at all, while simultaneously becoming numb to the subtler, slower-burning rewards of genuine accomplishment. The satisfaction of writing 500 carefully chosen words, which should register as meaningful and motivating, now barely registers as a whisper of sensation compared to the neurochemical explosion of infinite scroll. The quiet pride of cooking a nutritious meal cannot compete with the supernormal stimulus of food engineered to be more rewarding than anything found in nature. The deep contentment of reading a challenging book for an hour is completely drowned out by the constant novelty barrage of short-form video content. Your capacity for sustained focus atrophies like an unused muscle. Your tolerance for even momentary boredom evaporates completely. The idea of spending 2 uninterrupted hours on a single task becomes not just unappealing, but genuinely unbearable, psychologically painful, almost physically impossible. You have inadvertently rewired your reward system to prefer junk stimulus over genuine nourishment, and now the entire machinery of your motivation is broken, running on empty, choking on its own dysfunction. This brings us to the cruelest illusion the parasite maintains, the illusion of productivity. You spend your day moving, clicking, responding, organizing. You answer emails, you attend meetings, you create to-do lists, you research tools and systems and methodologies, you watch tutorials, you take notes, you reorganize your files, you clean your workspace. And at the end of this flurry of activity, you have accomplished nothing that moves you meaningfully closer to your actual goals. The parasite has convinced you that motion equals progress, that being busy is the same as being effective. This substitution is particularly insidious because it feels like work. You are expending energy. You are engaged with work-adjacent activities. But you are carefully avoiding the 1 or 2 tasks that actually matter, the tasks that require deep focus and generate genuine anxiety because they carry real stakes and the possibility of failure. The difficult phone call, the challenging piece of writing, the complex problem that demands original thinking. These tasks sit untouched while you perform elaborate rituals of pseudo-productivity, and the parasite whispers that you have earned rest because look how busy you have been. You must understand that willpower is not the solution to this problem. Willpower is a finite resource that depletes with use. Every time you resist an urge, every time you override an impulse, every time you force yourself to choose the difficult path over the easy one, you drain your willpower reserves. By the time you finish navigating the trivial decisions and minor resistances of a normal day, what to eat, whether to exercise, whether to check your phone, whether to have that second cookie, your willpower tank is empty. And this is precisely when the parasite strikes with maximum force. This is when you collapse into passive consumption, telling yourself you will start tomorrow, you will be disciplined tomorrow, tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow is never different because nothing in the underlying structure has changed. You are trying to overcome systemic failure through individual effort, attempting to win a rigged game through sheer force of determination. This cannot work. This has never worked. If willpower and good intentions were sufficient, you would have already achieved every goal you have ever set. The fact that you are watching this video, that you recognized yourself in every word thus far is proof that a different approach is required. We have arrived at the inflection point, the moment of decision that will determine whether this video becomes another piece of forgotten content or the genuine turning point in your life. You now possess a detailed understanding of the war being waged inside your skull. You have identified the pleasure parasite with precision, mapped its tactics with clarity, and recognized the biological mechanisms it exploits with ruthless efficiency. You understand that your enemy is not laziness or lack of discipline or insufficient motivation or weak character. Your enemy is a sophisticated system of neural hijacking that operates beneath your conscious awareness, systematically redirecting your attention and energy away from meaningful work toward empty consumption, away from growth toward comfort, away from becoming toward merely existing. This knowledge alone changes nothing. You have probably understood pieces of this before, nodded along with similar arguments, felt brief surges of determination. But knowledge without implementation is just entertainment, another form of consumption that allows you to feel productive while changing nothing. What separates this moment from all your previous moments of insight is what happens next. What follows is not theory. What follows is not inspiration. What follows is not another philosophical framework to add to your collection of frameworks you have never actually applied. What follows is a precise tactical protocol, a series of interventions designed not to motivate you, but to reprogram the battlefield itself, to eliminate the parasite's strategic advantages and make focus the path of least resistance. These are not gentle suggestions. These are not optional experiments to try when you feel ready. If you implement what comes next with full commitment, without negotiation, without allowing the parasite to water down the protocol or delay the implementation, your life will change not because you become a different person overnight, but because you construct a different environment, one in which the default path, the easy path, the path of least resistance, leads toward your goals rather than away from them. The first intervention is what we will call stimulus fasting, though you may have encountered it under the sanitized term dopamine detox. For a period of 72 consecutive hours, 3 complete days, the minimum necessary for meaningful neurological adaptation, you will eliminate every source of cheap dopamine from your environment. No social media of any kind, no exceptions for just checking work messages or quickly responding to comments, no streaming content, no YouTube, no Netflix, no Disney Plus, no Hulu, no television at all, no video games, no mobile games, no puzzle games, no gambling, no pornography or sexual content of any kind, no news websites, no Reddit, no Twitter, no Instagram, no TikTok, no endless browsing disguised as research, no processed foods engineered by food scientists to be hyperpalatable, no candy, no chips, no foods that come in brightly colored packaging with ingredient lists you cannot pronounce. During these 72 hours, you are permitted only analog activities, experiences that existed before the digital age, activities that require sustained attention and provide no artificially enhanced reward signal, reading physical books, not articles, not blogs, but actual books with depth and complexity. Walking outside without headphones, without podcasts, without any audio input, just you and your thoughts and the physical world. Thinking, actually sitting and thinking, without external input, a practice so rare in modern life that it feels almost transgressive. Writing by hand, with an actual pen on actual paper, thoughts that require formulation rather than consumption. Having face-to-face conversations, genuine exchanges with other humans in physical proximity. Exercising, moving your body through space with intentionality. Cooking basic, whole-ingredient meals that require preparation rather than unwrapping. Sleeping when you are tired rather than staying awake through artificial stimulation. This is not a permanent lifestyle. You are not becoming a monk. This is a temporary recalibration, a forced reset of your reward system, an emergency intervention to break the addiction cycle and restore your baseline sensitivity. The first 12 hours will feel manageable, perhaps even interesting in a novel way, maybe even pleasant, as you notice how much mental space opens up when you stop consuming. The next 24 hours will be significantly more difficult. You will experience what can only accurately be described as withdrawal, because that is precisely what it is. Do not yield. Sit with the discomfort. Observe it with clinical detachment as if you were a scientist studying an interesting phenomenon. Notice how the urge builds to a crescendo, and then, if you simply wait without acting on it, naturally subsides. Notice how you do not, in fact, die from boredom. Notice how after 48 hours, your mind begins to quiet. Thoughts that have been buried beneath constant stimulation begin to surface. You remember projects you abandoned. You have ideas for problems you have been avoiding. Your capacity for sustained attention, dormant for so long, begins to reawaken. By the end of 72 hours, you will notice something remarkable. Tasks that previously seemed unbearably difficult now register as merely challenging. Reading a book for an hour straight becomes possible again. Writing without checking your phone every 5 minutes becomes achievable. Your baseline has shifted. Your receptors, freed from constant bombardment, have begun to resensitize. The world of genuine satisfaction has become accessible once more. But recalibration alone is insufficient. You must now address the problem of initiation, the moment when you stand at the threshold of meaningful work and the parasite floods your system with resistance. This is where most people fail. They wait to feel motivated. They wait to feel ready. They wait for the perfect moment when clarity and enthusiasm align. This moment never arrives because motivation is not a prerequisite for action. Motivation is a consequence of action. Implement what we will call the zero inertia method. When you face a task that triggers resistance, you do not commit to completing it. You commit to engaging with it for precisely 10 minutes, not an hour, not until it is finished. 10 minutes. This time frame is short enough that the parasite cannot generate sufficient fear to prevent you from starting. You are not threatening it with hours of discomfort. You are proposing a brief, manageable experiment. Set a timer, open the document, pick up the phone, begin the workout. For 10 minutes, you focus exclusively on this single task. No multitasking, no checking other tabs, no glancing at your phone. 10 minutes of pure, uninterrupted engagement. When the timer sounds, you are free to stop. You have fulfilled your commitment. Permission granted to walk away. What you will discover is that in approximately 70% of cases, you will not stop. The barrier to entry was never the task itself. The barrier was the anticipation of the task, the wall of resistance your mind constructed in the space between intention and action. Once you are engaged, once you have overcome inertia and generated momentum, continuing becomes significantly easier than starting. The parasite's power is concentrated in that initial moment of resistance. Once you breach the perimeter, it loses much of its leverage. On the occasions when you do stop after 10 minutes, you have still achieved something critical. You have established proof that you can engage with difficult work. You have created a small deposit in your self-trust account. Tomorrow, the resistance will be slightly lower. The path will be slightly clearer. Progress compounds not through sporadic heroic effort, but through relentless consistency of minuscule actions. But we must go deeper still. Even with a recalibrated reward system and a strategy for overcoming initial resistance, you will fail if your environment remains hostile to. You cannot rely on discipline alone when your phone sits within arm's reach, whispering infinite promises of easy distraction. You cannot expect to write when your computer has 47 tabs open and notifications interrupt your flow state every 3 minutes. If you must actively resist temptation, you have already lost. Resistance depletes willpower, and willpower is finite. The solution is what we will call anti-parasite environment design. You must restructure your physical and digital environment so that focus becomes the path of least resistance, while distraction requires deliberate effort. Your phone does not live in your pocket or on your desk. It lives in a different room, preferably inside a drawer or cabinet, during any period designated for deep work. Not on silent, not face down. Physically separated. Every additional barrier between you and the distraction increases the likelihood that you will resist the impulse to check it. Your computer operates in distraction-free mode. Use software that blocks distracting websites during work hours. Not on an honor system. Not with a password you know. Use a blocker that requires you to restart your computer to circumvent it, creating enough friction that the impulse dies before you complete the process. Close all tabs except the one required for your current task. Silence all notifications. Every ping, every badge, every pop-up is an attack on your attention, a small theft of focus that requires reorientation time to recover. Your physical workspace contains only the materials required for your current task. No clutter to generate decision fatigue. No books you might prefer to be reading instead. No snacks to provide an excuse for micro breaks that expand into hour-long derailments. The environment must communicate a single message. This space is for focused work and nothing else. When your brain enters this environment, it should begin to automatically shift into focus mode through pure association. But even a perfectly designed environment will not overcome the parasite's final defense mechanism, the comfort of infinite time. When a task has no deadline, when you can always do it tomorrow or next week or next month, the parasite will always win. It will generate an endless stream of reasons why today is not optimal, why conditions are not quite right, why it would be more efficient to wait until you have more information or more energy or more clarity. The antidote is artificial urgency. You must impose constraints that trigger your survival instinct, the only force powerful enough to override the parasite's influence. Set a deadline for your project, not months away, but days away, even hours away. Announce this deadline publicly. Tell someone you respect that you will deliver the completed work by this specific time. Create stakes. Attach consequences to failure, whether that is financial penalty or public embarrassment or the loss of an opportunity. When you feel the pressure of genuine urgency, when you sense time running out and the possibility of failure becoming real, your brain shifts into a different mode. Suddenly, the distractions that seemed so compelling 5 minutes ago become obviously irrelevant. Suddenly, you discover reserves of focus you did not know you possessed. Suddenly, the work that felt impossible becomes merely difficult, and difficult becomes doable because there is no alternative. This is not sustainable as a permanent state, but it is extraordinarily effective as a tool for breaking through the initial barrier of a new habit or completing a project that has languished for months in the realm of someday. Now we must address a particular variant of the parasite that afflicts a significant portion of the population with particular intensity, the alert brain, sometimes clinically labeled as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, though this framing is misleading. The brain is not deficient in attention. It possesses abundant attention that rapidly shifts across multiple targets, perpetually scanning for novelty, highly sensitive to boredom, extraordinarily responsive to interesting stimulation. If you possess this type of neurology, the strategies thus far will help, but may not be sufficient. Your brain requires a higher baseline of stimulation to maintain engagement. Silence and stillness, which some find conducive to focus, may cause your attention to fracture into 1,000 competing thoughts. You need novelty, but you need to harness it productively rather than allowing it to scatter your efforts. The solution is strategic gamification and environmental novelty. Transform your work into a game with clear levels, points, and rewards. Use a physical timer that provides visual feedback. Compete against your previous performance. Change your work location frequently. Today, you write in a coffee shop, tomorrow in a library, the next day in a park. Your brain craves novelty. Provide it with constantly shifting contexts for the same fundamental task. Use music specifically engineered for focus, binaural beats, or Baroque compositions or film soundtracks without lyrics. The audio provides just enough stimulation to satisfy the novelty-seeking mechanism without derailing your attention. Implement what researchers call body doubling. Work in the physical or virtual presence of another person who is also working. This can be a friend, a colleague, a video call where both participants have their cameras on but are working silently, or even a coffee shop where others are engaged in focused work. Your alert brain is highly attuned to social cues. When it observes others maintaining focus, it unconsciously mirrors that behavior. The presence of another working person creates a gentle accountability structure and a model for sustained attention that your brain will naturally attempt to match. Most critically, you must abandon the fiction that you will maintain perfect focus for extended periods. Your brain does not operate that way. Work in shorter, more intense bursts with structured breaks. 25 minutes of complete focus, followed by 5 minutes of deliberate rest. 4 cycles, then a longer break. During the break, move your body, step outside, change your visual field. Do not check your phone or scroll or engage in any activity that triggers the dopamine cascade. The break is for recovery, not for feeding the parasite. We arrive now at the ultimate reframing, the shift in perspective that must occur if any of these tactics are to generate lasting transformation. You must begin to conceptualize time as physical wealth, as a non-renewable resource more precious than any currency. Money, if lost, can be regenerated. Time, once spent, is gone forever. Every hour you possess is quite literally a fragment of your life, a piece of your finite existence that you are choosing to invest in some particular activity. Consider this thought experiment. Imagine that someone approached you and offered to pay you $50 to scroll through social media for 3 hours. Would you accept? Most would instinctively refuse, recognizing that 3 hours of their life is worth more than $50. Yet you regularly give away 3 hours for free, receiving nothing in return, not even the $50. You are performing the same action, but without compensation, without acknowledgement that you are trading something valuable for nothing at all. Every time you open a social media app, every time you click on a clickbait article designed to provoke outrage or anxiety, every time you watch one more episode when your body is begging for sleep, you are making a transaction. You are exchanging minutes or hours of your existence, irreplaceable fragments of your finite life, for a specific experience. Ask yourself with brutal honesty, was that experience worth the price? Did that hour of scrolling provide value equivalent to 1 hour of your precious limited life? Would you make the same trade if the cost were made explicit and immediate, if a voice announced clearly, you are about to trade 1 hour of your existence, 1 hour that you will never have again, 1 hour that could have been spent creating something meaningful, or deepening a relationship, or developing a skill, or simply being fully present to the miracle of consciousness, for the experience of scrolling through this manufactured feed of other people's curated moments? Confirm to proceed. Most people have never performed this calculation with brutal honesty. Most people do not want to acknowledge the mathematics of their existence. Most people prefer to remain comfortably numb to the fact that the average human being in developed countries spends approximately 7 years of their life on social media, 4 years watching television, 3 years in unnecessary meetings, 2 years grooming and preparing appearance, 1 year looking for misplaced objects. 7 years. That is not 7 years of calendar. Time. That is 7 years of waking consciousness, of irreplaceable moments that could have been spent in any other way. These numbers should strike you as obscene, as a civilizational tragedy, as evidence that something has gone catastrophically wrong in how we conceptualize and protect our time. Construct what we will call the calendar of reality. This is not an abstract exercise. This is a confrontation with your mortality. Take a large sheet of paper or poster board. Draw a grid, 52 boxes horizontally representing the 52 weeks in a year, 80 boxes vertically representing 80 years of life, if you are lucky enough to live that long, which many people are not. You now have 4,160 boxes. Each box represents 1 week of human life. This is what a life looks like when rendered visible. Shade in all the boxes that represent weeks you have already lived. Color them completely. Mark them as gone. Recognize them as spent and unrecoverable. What you see before you is a visual representation of your remaining life, your actual, finite, physical future, assuming you reach 80 years old, which is not guaranteed by any contract, not promised by any authority, not secured by any insurance policy. Now consider how many of those remaining boxes you have already mentally allocated to the parasite without even realizing it. How many will be consumed by mindless scrolling, passive consumption, the shadow playground of unearned leisure and unearned guilt? How many represent the book you will never write, the skill you will never develop, the relationship you will never repair, the conversation you will never have, the trip you will never take, the person you will never become because you chose comfort over action, later over now, someday over today, the easy path over the meaningful path? The parasite wants you to believe that time is infinite, that tomorrow is guaranteed, that there will always be another opportunity, another year, another decade, to finally become the person you claim you want to be, to finally do the thing you keep saying you will do. This is the foundational lie that sustains the hijacking, the core delusion that makes possible all other forms of self-deception. Time is not infinite. Time is the scarcest resource you possess, more precious than money, more valuable than any material possession, more irreplaceable than any relationship. Every single day you wake up, there are fewer days remaining. Every month that passes brings you measurably closer to the end of whatever period of health and capability and consciousness you will be granted. You are not immortal. You are not promised even one more hour beyond this one. The only moment you possess with absolute certainty is now, this present instant, and you are choosing to spend it in some particular way, whether consciously or unconsciously, whether deliberately or by default. Discipline is not punishment. This is perhaps the most critical. Reframing you must internalize. Discipline is not suffering. Discipline is not deprivation. Discipline is not the joyless grind of forcing yourself to do things you hate. Discipline is the mechanism by which you align your actions with your stated values, by which you ensure that how you actually spend your time reflects what you actually claim to care about. It is the bridge between who you are and who you want to become. Discipline is the practice of protecting your attention from the infinite forces attempting to monetize and exploit it. Discipline is the daily choice, repeated 1,000 times, to feed your potential rather than your comfort, to invest your hours in becoming rather than merely being, to choose the path that requires effort over the path that requires nothing. Freedom is not the absence of constraint. The person who can do anything they want at any moment, who is enslaved to every passing impulse, who has no structure or commitment or self-imposed limitation, is not free. They are enslaved to impulse, to the parasite's endless demands for immediate gratification, to the tyranny of the urgent over the important. True freedom is the capacity to choose the difficult path when it serves your long-term flourishing, to delay gratification in service of a larger vision, to say no to the easy yes and yes to the difficult no. True freedom is arriving at the end of your life, whenever that comes, expected or unexpected, and knowing that you spent your finite hours deliberately, that you constructed something meaningful from the raw material of time, that you did not sleepwalk through your existence unconscious and anesthetized. True freedom is dying with no regrets about the life you failed to live because you were too comfortable to start living it. This video is ending. In approximately 60 seconds, you will return to your life, to the same environment, the same habits, the same comfortable patterns of avoidance and distraction that have kept you paralyzed for months or years or perhaps decades. The parasite is already preparing its arguments, crafting its defenses, marshaling its forces for the counterattack. It is whispering that this was interesting and insightful, but you should start tomorrow when you are more rested and more prepared. It is suggesting that you are tired today and deserve rest, that you have already expended effort by watching this video, and that effort should be rewarded with comfort. It is proposing that you will implement these ideas next week when you have more time, when conditions are more favorable, when you feel more motivated. It is insisting that you need to think about it more before committing, that you should create a detailed plan, that you should do more research, that you should wait until you have all the information before taking action. These thoughts are not your thoughts. They are not the voice of wisdom or prudence or careful planning. They are the parasite's desperate final defense against the threat you represent. They are the last line of resistance between your current state of comfortable paralysis and the possibility of genuine transformation. The parasite knows, with the perfect instinct of an organism fighting for survival, that if it can delay you for just a few more minutes, if it can redirect you to just one more video or article or scroll session, then the momentum of this moment will dissipate like smoke, and you will return to the familiar patterns that have defined your existence thus far. You will not think about it. You will not wait until tomorrow. You will not ease into it gradually. You will not create an elaborate plan before taking the first step. The moment this video ends, before you allow yourself to do anything else, before you check your messages or watch another video or scroll through comments or visit any other website or app, you will identify the single most important task you have been avoiding, the task that triggers maximum resistance, the task that you know in your deepest core matters most for your actual goals, the task that the parasite has successfully protected you from for days or weeks or months, and you will engage with it for exactly 10 minutes. Not tomorrow morning when you are fresh. Not after you check your messages to make sure nothing urgent requires your attention. Not after you watch just one more video to get properly inspired. Immediately. The timer starts the exact moment you press pause on this video. This is not optional. This is not a suggestion to consider. This is not advice to implement when you feel ready. This is the inflection point, the moment of choice, that will determine whether this video becomes another piece of consumed and forgotten content or the genuine turning point in your life. You now possess the knowledge. You understand the mechanisms with precision. You have been given the complete protocol. The only question remaining, the only variable that matters, is whether you will act on it or whether you will file it away in the ever-growing, never-shrinking collection of things you know you should do but never actually implement. The parasite is betting you will choose comfort. It has won this bet 10,000 times before. It knows your patterns better than you know yourself. It knows exactly how to redirect you, how to delay you, how to convince you that you will start later. Prove it wrong. 10 minutes, starting now. No negotiation, no delay, no exceptions. The time is now. Move. Don't forget to give a like or a hype and subscribe to the channel. Watch the next video to complete everything you just learned.